but no democracy. The first elections were held in 1952, but only for the newly created Urban Council and not under universal franchise. Mildly reformist political parties contested such polls, but their influence rarely extended to the Legislative Council. Hong Kong's longest-serving legislator, Alan Lee, describes the appointed LegCo as a cosy club. A consensus was reached with Executive Council members behind closed doors and then rubber-stamped at public sessions.
But it was only a form of a public service, and we didn't think we have a political role to play. It's just serving the people of Hong Kong, and we don't need to be accountable to anybody but ourselves.
Britain and China's secret negotiations on the territory's future without consulting its people was the catalyst for political activity and calls for democracy. Independent legislator Emily Lau, then a journalist and pro-democracy activist, contrasts Hong Kong's situation at the time with the Falkland Islands, whose elected government and people had been championed by then British Prime Minister Margaret Thatcher.
But in the case of Hong Kong, another colony, we had no democracy, no elected government, and Mrs. Thatcher would only say that the situation of Hong Kong was unique in the sense that we should have no say whatsoever over our destiny.
After the territory's future was sealed by the Joint Declaration, Britain introduced reforms that led to some indirectly elected members sitting on LegCo from 1985. Further changes were proposed in 1988, but the government shelved them, citing Chinese pressure not to go any further until the Basic Law was promulgated 2 years later. Critics say this was a lost opportunity to introduce full democracy before the mini-constitution set electoral limits. The 1989 Tiananmen Square crackdown generated much political activity in the territory as confidence about Chinese rule plunged. That and the announcement of direct elections for part of LegCo in 1991 led to the formation of many of the political parties that operate today. The arrival of Chris Patten in 1992 as the last governor with his political reform agenda brought more upheaval. Lengthy talks with China failed to reach a compromise on elections to choose a legislature that straddled the handover. Mr. Patten went ahead with the polls anyway after his system was endorsed by LegCo at a marathon session in 1994.
I, of course, put forward my own private member's bill for all 60 seats to be directly elected by universal suffrage, and I was defeated by one vote. Chris Patten won by only one vote.
Under the governor's system, 20 legislators were directly elected in 1995, and the rest came from functional constituencies. Pro-democracy candidates dominated in the geographical constituencies, while business and pro-China groups did better in other seats. Infuriated by events over the border, China set up its own bodies to decide Hong Kong's future, drafting willing officials from past and present alienated by Mr. Patten's rule. Accused by the pro-democracy camp of changing sides for political expedience, China's advisers say cooperating with Beijing has been crucial.
If people thought that I do switch, that they won't elect me. That's my answer. They won't elect me. Right? So I think as far as the Chinese is concerned, the Liberal Party decided we had to have a dialogue with them, and we got to work with them over the future of Hong Kong. But we're not sacrificing Hong Kong people's interest to do so.
China has made good on its pledge to scrap LegCo upon the handover and replace it with the provisional legislature, chosen by a 400-member selection committee. More than half of LegCo joined its ranks, while the rest opted to stay out of what they say is an illegal body. The incoming SAR government has promised to hold fresh elections next year under a system that is yet to be decided.
Well, in less than 15 minutes, we will have the official handover ceremony. Preparations now taking place in the Grand Hall, where reporter Yuan Chan is standing by. Yuan.
Thanks, Anne. There's a real air of anticipation here in the Grand Hall as guests take their places for the handover ceremony. Military bands are also taking position, and in just over 10 minutes' time, it will be the beginning of a ceremony which will mark the end of 150 years of British rule in the territory. On the stage, we can see seats for the 5 representatives from the outgoing and incoming sovereign powers. For Britain, the Prince of Wales, the Prime Minister Tony Blair, Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, the Governor Chris Patten, and the Chief of Defence Staff staff. For China, President Jiang Zemin, Premier Li Peng, Vice Premier Chen Chi-chen, Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission Zhang Wanyan, and Chief Executive Designate Tun Chi-hua. The ceremony itself will last around half an hour. Prince Charles will deliver a speech before the British national anthem is played and the flags of Britain and Hong Kong are lowered. After that, the March of the Volunteers will be played to the raising of the Chinese and SAR flags. And with that, the Crown Colony of Hong Kong will become a special administrative region of the People's Republic of China. We'll have more as the story unfolds. Back to Anne.
Thank you, Ewan. A great sense of anticipation while we wait for that handover ceremony to start in about 10 minutes' time. But let's cross over now to London, where reporter Steve Marshall can fill us in on what the activities are like there. Steve.
Well, Anne, it's a bit early yet here for the champagne corks to start popping. It's only 4:15 London time and most people are at work. But throughout Britain, the local Chinese communities here are planning big events this evening. In fact, at the moment, there's one happening at the London Arena where over the weekend, this 3-day event has already attracted 23,000 people. But in Chinatown in London, Chinatown in Liverpool, there will be festivities this evening, people watching the live events coming from Hong Kong. And on the official side, Deputy Prime Minister John Prescott will be hosting a small low-key reception at Whitehall, and the Chinese Embassy will be holding a similar low-key reception about 7 o'clock London time this evening.
The British media have been playing up the Hong Kong story.
Well, for most of the week, the wettest June in 15 years and the lack of play at Wimbledon have stolen the show here locally away from the highlight in Hong Kong, but not so today. The front pages of the papers, such as The Times, have been leading off with Tung Chee-hua's promise of an early election and the fact that Jiang Zemin has reassured the local people in Hong Kong that he will safeguard the rights and freedoms of Hong Kong citizens. But some other papers have not been as quite as flatterous as that with regards to what's happening in Hong Kong. The Daily Telegraph has dwelled on Tung Chee-hua's decision to boycott the British sunset farewell ceremony, and its editorial reflects on conceding Hong Kong to the world's greatest tyranny. So it believes today is a very sad moment for Britain's colonial history and the fact that the sun is setting on the imperial era of Britain's history.
Apart from the official activities and, of course, the events taking place in Chinatowns around the major cities, does the average man in the street have any conception of what's going on in Hong Kong?
Well, of the people that I've spoken to, which ranges from members of House of Commons to the local Chinese communities to the average punter in London, most people think it's fair enough and about time. There is some nervousness, some anxiety about the future of human rights and democracy in Hong Kong, but most people believe it's about time that this event happened, that the Chinese of mainland China regained Hong Kong, and likewise the Chinese people of Hong Kong returned to the motherland, so people think it's about time.
Steve Marshall reporting from London. Thank you very much. We're going to take a break. When we come back, we will pick up the official final handover ceremony. Welcome back. You're watching ATV's live coverage of the handover. We're into the final hour of British rule. We have reporter Craig Leeson standing by in Beijing, where festivities have been taking place. Obviously, a great sense of occasion as the Chinese welcome the reunification of Hong Kong. Craig.
Well, we're taking a break at the moment, Rahina, but we've seen a great display of traditional European opera here and a very colourful display. It's not the only thing going on here at the square. Of course, most people, though, are looking at the countdown clock. And, well, we're only 2,250 seconds to go before the final 10 seconds and Hong Kong's reunification with China. In front of me is the Great Hall of the People. The square here itself is divided into about 8 different sections. And in each one of those sections, we're witnessing several different events at once. We've seen children performing traditional Chinese dances. We've got drumming in one area and acrobatics in another area. The crowd here, 100,000 people, all invited. watching this magnificent event. But we were talking about security earlier. Security is enormously tight here. People are not allowed to move in or out of their respective areas. In fact, I had difficulty once I went for a look around the square to check out the other activities, getting back into the media area here. I spoke to a China analyst here from Hong Kong earlier today. He went up to the Great Wall and he said at a time like this there are normally thousands of people there. Today there was no one. He was the only person here, and he said many parts of Beijing are in fact blocked off because of that. This, of course, is a very significant event for the Chinese because it restores the boundaries of China here, and foreigners, I guess, in the eyes of the Chinese are being expelled once and for all. It puts behind the Chinese the humiliation of the 19th century, and you can see that here tonight. Patriotism is very high. Many people are walking around with a Chinese flag and also carrying the Hong Kong new SAR flag bearing the Bohemia flower symbol. So patriotism here is extremely high tonight, and I think most people are enjoying the activities that are going on here. Earlier tonight we saw a magnificent fireworks display, extremely colourful, and shortly after midnight, once the countdown is complete, we'll see another fireworks display which we're promising will be even more spectacular.
Craig, thanks very much. We're going to cross over now live to Yuan Chan, who's standing by in the Grand Hall. Handover ceremony just about to get underway. Yuan.
Thanks, Anne. The atmosphere here is really hotting up. As you can hear, the bands behind me are playing. The delegates from Britain and China are taking their places on the stage, and the principals are set to arrive any minute now. The ceremony, of course, will take less than half an hour. It'll be a simple ceremony, the lowering of the British and Hong Kong flags, the raising of the Chinese and SAR flags. Guests are from more than 40 countries, 4,000 of them, including some representatives from Taiwan. There was some wrangling over their attendance, but that's more or less been sorted out. And as you can hear, the bands are really reaching a crescendo now as we wait for the ceremony to begin.
Ewan, there are bilateral talks that are taking place now between Tony Blair and Chinese President Jiang Zemin. Any word on that?
Well, all we know about the talks is that both sides have been very upbeat about them, and Tony Blair just said he was happy with the meeting. Jiang Zemin said it was very efficient. He also congratulated Mr. Blair on his recent electoral success, a landslide victory in Parliament for Mr. Blair's Labour Party. They were talking about Hong Kong, of course, and there are differences between the two sides over issues such as the provisional legislature. But when all is said and done, Mr. Blair said that he hopes the handover will actually mark a beginning for Sino-British relations, an improvement. And we can only hope that that is indeed what will happen.
And where does that leave Hong Kong, Ewan? Will Hong Kong benefit as a result of these talks between Tony Blair and Chinese President Jiang Zemin?
Yes, well, hopefully those talks will have a good effect for Hong Kong. But what we have seen is that the United States is already taking a larger role in the future of speaking up to China about issues such as human rights and civil liberties. Britain perhaps working in conjunction with the US. For instance, both of them tried to organize a boycott of the swearing in of the provisional legislature. That by and large not very successful, and both sides will actually be sending diplomats to that ceremony.
Yuan Chan, reporting from the Grand Hall. We'll come back to you a little bit later. I've got with me in the studio now Frank Ching. Frank, these bilateral talks that have been taking place, what's your assessment of how Hong Kong will operate as a result?
I don't think we know very much yet about the content of these talks, but I gather that Chen Chi-chun, the Chinese Vice Premier, has invited the British Foreign Minister to visit China, and Mr. Cook has accepted the invitation. So I think that this gives a chance for the Chinese officials to get to know people in the new British government, the Prime Minister and Foreign Minister. And I think it raises the question about Hong Kong after July 1st, whether Hong Kong will be a bridge between Britain and China, or whether it will become an obstacle to improve relations between the two countries.
Of course, Tony Blair and Robin Cook, his foreign secretary, have decided to leave the handover ceremony before the inauguration of Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa and his administration. American Secretary of State Madeleine Albright also deciding to boycott the event. And yet they're going to be sending senior officials to the inauguration. Do you think that sends mixed signals to the Hong Kong public?
Well, I think it's a sensible move because I think neither the US nor the UK can really pretend that the provisional legislature doesn't exist. It's going to be there for the next year. And if the US and the UK are going to be working with Hong Kong, with the Hong Kong government, this provisional legislature is an integral part of the SAR government. They cannot pretend that it's not there. And there will be times when they will need to work with this new legislature. So I think it's a pragmatic move to send people at a somewhat lower level to the swearing in.
Frank Ching will come back to you later for more of your views. Let's take a short break and we'll be right back with more activities governing the handover. Well, we won't take a break. We will cross over, as you can see, live to the Grand Hall where guests are assembled for the official handover ceremony. It will get underway shortly. We'll pick up the activities there. Leading the Chinese delegation are President Jiang Zemin, Premier Li Peng, National People's Congress Vice Chairman Wang Hanbin, the Vice Chairman of the Central Military Commission, Zhang Wanyan, and of course C.H. Tung, our future Chief Executive. Leading the British delegation is Prince Charles.
High-tech flagpoles they have. They're flagpoles that produce wind, so the flags have fluttering doors.
PLA military.
Recently, when a new law was introduced in Hong Kong on June 14th, which prohibits desecration of national and regional flags and emblems. There hadn't been a law of that kind before, but under that new law there are penalties newly introduced for any offence by which the flags or emblems are damaged, either burnt, mutilated, scrawled on or trampled. And very serious penalties include a year in jail and a fine of around $1,000 US will be applied to anyone who's convicted.
Brief glimpse there of Sir David Akers-Jones and Lady Akers-Jones. Sir David was a very senior civil servant here, Chief Secretary, and indeed he was the acting governor after the sad death of Sir Edward Yude in Beijing. He is now an advisor to China on Hong Kong matters, and he sits on a number of boards of companies here, having long since retired.
Here comes Prince of Wales with Robin Cook, the British Foreign Secretary, to take their places. There'll be a speech by the Prince of Wales, then the flag ceremonies. The British and Hong Kong flags will be brought down, and the People's Republic of China flag and the Hong Kong Bohemian flag will be raised. The British national anthem will be played, and the Chinese national anthem will also be played, and that will signify the handover. And then there'll be a speech by the Chinese senior leader, Jiang Zemin. That'll conclude the handover ceremony just after midnight. Although, of course, events will continue throughout the night, which we'll be showing you here on this live broadcast, including the inauguration of the new government of the Special Administrative Region.
Now the arrival of President Jiang Zemin of China. Premier Li Peng behind him. Mr. Chen Chi-chen and the first Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, Tung Chi-Wah, or Dung Bin-Wah as he's known in Hong Kong.
Well, the guest is getting into the mood of the occasion, clapping along.
Like a Hong Kong audience, isn't it? Yeah, it must be
Normally very
spirited.
Normally very solemn, but this is after all a celebration this evening. I think the marching music is encouraging people to participate.
You won't hear better military music because it's, as we were saying earlier, the #1 PLA band. And no doubt the Scots Guards would consider themselves, if not #1, it's certainly second to none in the British Army, which has a long tradition of fine military music. There are two, so to speak, groups of top representatives. The Chinese group, Jiang Zemin is the #1, and then Li Peng, sitting to his right, and then Chen Chi-chen, the Foreign Minister and Vice Premier. Then the senior general in the People's Liberation Army, General Zhang Wanyan, and next to him, the first Chief Executive of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region, Tung Chi-Wah, and the direct equivalents on the other side will be Prince Charles, and to his left, Tony Blair, the Prime Minister, then Robin Cook, the Foreign Minister, Chris Patten, the Governor of Hong Kong, and equivalent to General Jiang will be General Sir Charles Guthrie, who is the Chief of the Defence Staff in Britain. That is to say, there you see a close-up of General Jiang Wanyan.
If you wonder why they're waiting, it's because of the timing of the event. It's timed to the second, and this is the, if you like, the moment when they can hit the right time just by delaying the exact start of the proceeding. So you can imagine what's going through the minds of the principal guests this evening as they prepare to make history, the most remarkable moment in history of its kind, the return of Hong Kong to British sovereignty, from British sovereignty to Chinese sovereignty. The first time that probably the most capitalist place in the world has been handed to the socialist country of China.
One of the reasons that China would like this to go well is obviously that it might be a blueprint for the return of Taiwan to association within China, perhaps along lines similar to the way Hong Kong has been reabsorbed. And among the audience is the Taiwanese representative, the chairman of the Taiwan Straits Exchange Foundation, Gu Chengfu, and he will be at the head of a delegation of a number of Taiwanese officials who have been invited to attend.
Around 60 were invited.
60, is it?
And they were their description for diplomatic purposes is China in brackets Taiwan, China Taiwan, which gets around the problem of what to call the country of Taiwan, which is regarded as still a renegade province.
Principal representatives of the United Kingdom are His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales, the Right Honourable Tony Blair, MP, Prime Minister, the Right Honourable Robin Cook, MP, Secretary of State for Foreign and Commonwealth Affairs, the Right Honourable Christopher Patten, His Excellency the Governor of Hong Kong, and General Sir Charles Guthrie, Chief of the Defence Staff. The principal representatives of the People's Republic of China are His Excellency Mr. Jiang Zemin, President, His Excellency Mr. Li Peng, Premier of the State Council, His Excellency Vice President
是亲王殿下，布莱尔首相阁下。
First to march in is the British side, the Guard of Honour, 1 officer and 36 soldiers from the Army, Navy and the Royal Air Force. And on the Chinese side, a similar number from the 3 armed forces, the RAF, the Navy and the Army.
British Military Guard, as usual, led by the senior service, the Royal Navy.
Three daughters of Governor Chris Patten there, and his wife Lavender in front of them.
Jiang Zemin leads the principal Chinese representatives onto the stage.
And leading the British delegation is General Sir Charles Guthrie, Chief of the Defence Staff.
Please be seated.
请坐下。
His Royal Highness the Prince of Wales.
威尔士亲王殿下讲话。
Premier Li Peng, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. This important and special ceremony marks a moment of both change and continuity in Hong Kong's history. It marks, first of all, the restoration of Hong Kong to the People's Republic of China under the terms of the Sino-British Joint Declaration of 1984, after more than 150 years of British administration. This ceremony also celebrates continuity because, by that same treaty and the many subsequent agreements which have been made to implement its provisions, the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region will have its own government and retain its own society, its own economy, and its own way of life. I should like to pay tribute this evening to those who turned the concept of one country, two systems into the Joint Declaration, and to the dedication and commitment of those who have worked so hard over the last 13 years to negotiate the details of the Joint Declaration's implementation. But most of all, I should like to pay tribute to the people of Hong Kong themselves for all that they have achieved in the last century and a half. The triumphant success of Hong Kong demands and deserves to be maintained. Hong Kong has shown the world how dynamism and stability can be defining characteristics of a successful society. These have together created a great economy which is the envy of the world. Hong Kong has shown the world how East and West can live and work together. As a flourishing commercial and cultural crossroads, it has brought us together and enriched all our lives. 13 years ago, the governments of the United Kingdom and the People's Republic of China recognized in the Joint Declaration that these special elements which had created the crucial conditions for Hong Kong's success should continue. They agreed that in order to maintain that success, Hong Kong should have its own separate trading and financial systems, should enjoy autonomy and an elected legislature, should maintain its laws and liberties, and should be run by the people of Hong Kong and be accountable to them. Those special elements have served Hong Kong well over the past 2 decades. Hong Kong has coped with the challenges of great economic, social, and political transition with almost none of the disturbance and dislocation which in other parts of the world have so often accompanied change on such a scale. The United Kingdom has been proud and privileged to have had responsibility for the people of Hong Kong, to have provided a framework of opportunity in which Hong Kong has so conspicuously succeeded, and to have been part of the success which the people of Hong Kong have made of their own opportunities. In a few moments, the United Kingdom's responsibilities will pass to the People's Republic of China. Hong Kong will thereby be restored to China, and within the framework of one country, two systems, it will continue to have a strong identity of its own and be an important international partner for many countries in the world. Ladies and gentlemen, China will tonight take responsibility for a place and a people which matter greatly to us all. The solemn pledges made before the world in the 1984 Joint Declaration guarantee the continuity of Hong Kong's way of life. For its part, the United Kingdom will maintain its unwavering support for the Joint Declaration. Our commitment and our strong links to Hong Kong will continue and will, I am confident, flourish as Hong Kong and its people themselves continue to flourish. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I should like, on behalf of Her Majesty the Queen and of the entire British people, to express our thanks, admiration, affection, and good wishes to all the people of Hong Kong who have been such staunch and special friends over so many generations. We shall not forget you, and we shall watch with the closest interest as you embark on this new era of your remarkable history.
All please stand for the flag ceremony.
降旗升旗仪式现在开始，请全体起立。
The Union flag and the Hong Kong flag will now be lowered, and the national flag of the People's Republic of China and the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region flag will be raised.
现在将联合王国国旗和香港旗升中华人民共和国国旗和香港特别行政区区旗。
British Guard of Honor, look up! British Guard of Honor, present up! Standing at the
请坐下。
Please be seated.
现在，请中华人民共和国主席江泽民阁下讲话。
His Excellency Mr. Jiang Zemin, President of the People's Republic of China, will now speak.
查尔斯王子、布莱尔首相，尊敬的各位嘉宾、女士们、先生们，中华人民共和国国旗和中华人民共和国香港特别行政区区旗已在香港庄严升起。此时此刻，此时此刻，世界各国人民都把目光投向香港。根据中英关于香港问题的联合声明，两国政府如期举行了香港交接仪式，宣告中国对香港恢复行使主权，中华人民共和国香港特别行政区正式成立。这是中华民族的盛事，也是世界和平与正义事业的胜利。 1997年7月1日这一天，将作为值得人们永远纪念的日子载入史册。经历了100年沧桑的香港回归祖国，标志着香港同胞从此成为祖国这块土地上的真正主人。香港的发展从此进了一个崭新的时代，历史将会记住提出一国两制创造性构想的邓小平先生。我们正是按照一国两制伟大构想指明的方针，通过外交谈判成功地解决了香港问题，终于实现了香港回归祖国。
On this solemn occasion, I wish to express my heartfelt thanks to all the personages in both China and Britain who have contributed to the settlement of the Hong Kong question, and to all those in the world who have cared for and supported Hong Kong's return to the motherland. On this solemn occasion, I wish to extend my cordial greetings and best wishes to the 6 million or more Hong Kong compatriots who have now returned to the embrace of the motherland. After the return of Hong Kong, the Chinese government will unswervingly implement the basic policies of one country, two systems, Hong Kong people administering Hong Kong, and a high degree of autonomy, and keep the previous social-economic system and way of life of Hong Kong unchanged, and its laws basically unchanged. After the return of Hong Kong, the Central People's Government shall be responsible for the foreign affairs relating to Hong Kong and the defense of Hong Kong. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region shall be vested in accordance with the Basic Law with executive power, legislative power, and independent judicial power, including that of final adjudication. The Hong Kong residents shall enjoy various rights and freedoms according to law. The Hong Kong Special Administrative Region shall gradually develop a democratic system that suits Hong Kong's reality. After the return, Hong Kong will retain its status of a free port, continue to function as an international financial, trade and shipping center, and maintain and develop its economic and cultural ties with other countries, regions, and relevant international organizations. The legitimate economic interests of all countries and regions in Hong Kong will be protected by law. I hope that all the countries and regions that have investment and trade interests here will continue to work for the prosperity and stability of Hong Kong. Hong Kong compatriots have a glorious patriotic tradition. Hong Kong's prosperity today, in the final analysis, has been built by Hong Kong compatriots. It is also inseparable from the development and support of the mainland. I am confident that with the strong backing of the entire Chinese people, the government of the Hong Kong Special Administrative Region and Hong Kong compatriots will be able to manage Hong Kong well, build it up, and maintain its long-term prosperity and stability, thus ensuring Hong Kong a more splendid future. Thank you.
And that's the first time that President Jiang has spoken in Hong Kong. Proud moment for him and 1,000 million other Chinese people. Obviously they feel, for the most part, the discredit of Hong Kong not being part of China for so many years, and now it's back in the fold.
Well, that ends the handover ceremony, the official part of it. It's only now for the guests to leave.
江主席、查尔斯王子退场。
The diplomatic niceties there apparent, not sure who should leave first. One perhaps thinks it should be Prince Charles since Britain is departing. However, it looks like they're going to leave together.
The form is that the Prince Charles and the British party who are departing on the Britannia will be seen off. They are now the guests, as it were, in Chinese territory, so they will be seen off officially at the East, what is now called East Tamar, the former Tamar military base, naval base, where HMY, Her Majesty's Yacht Britannia, is waiting to take Prince Charles, the Governor, Mr. Patton, Chief of Defence Staff, and their wives, and other official party on the Britannia, in fact to the Philippines, from where they'll fly back to Britain. And Mr. Jiang will remain in Hong Kong, as will the Chinese officials, and then in due course they will return back to their duties in China.
President Jiang Zemin looking visibly very relieved during the ceremony. He looked somewhat solemn, understandably, considering the...
And these are the photographs that will now be, by electronic means, winging around the world and will be on the front pages of every single newspaper in the world.
And
one of Prince Charles and Jiang Zemin shaking hands must be a prime candidate for the front pages. Perhaps the Union Jack coming down. This has really been, I think, Ian, if not the greatest news event of the decade, perhaps even of, what do you like, 50 years?
Oh, absolutely, and certainly for a billion Chinese tonight, a great cause for celebration, certainly the greatest moment, I think, in Chinese history since the liberation. And after just over 150 years of British rule, Hong Kong returns to the fold. And a happy ending, all the differences sorted out just in time.
Certainly there was a time when the prospect of such a civilized and mutually happy occasion didn't look all that certain. It took an awful lot of negotiating and goodwill for it to turn out as well as this.
Well, we leave the end of the official handover ceremony and that commentary from RTHK. Of course, it's now official. Hong Kong is now part of China as a special administrative region. 156 years of British rule have come to an end in a short and solemn ceremony. Prince Charles, speaking on behalf of the Queen, underlining the importance of the joint declaration that sealed Hong Kong's fate 13 years ago, the one country, two systems formula, the high degree of autonomy, as well as Hong Kong people ruling Hong Kong. And of course, Chinese President Jiang Zemin saying that the return of Hong Kong was a victory for China, pleased that Hong Kong was now returning to the fold. And he also underlining the importance of the one country, two systems formula, a unique formula devised by Deng Xiaoping. Well, we're going to cross over now live to Yuan Chan, who's been watching the proceedings at the Grand Hall. Yuan.
Thanks, Anne. Well, it was simple. It didn't take very long. It was very straightforward. But Hong Kong, as you say, is now a part of China. It's a solemn ceremony, but one in which there was plenty of applause from the guests who were invited here. President Jiang Zemin, the first communist leader of China to step foot in Hong Kong, made a speech in which he paid tribute to the people who negotiated for the blueprint which will dictate Hong Kong's future under Chinese rule, the Joint Declaration. He paid special tribute to Deng Xiaoping, the late patriarch leader who conceived of the concept of one country, two systems. Mr. Deng, of course, who could not be here tonight, he passed away earlier this year, but who was represented by his widow, Duo Lin, and his daughter, Deng Nan. Prince Charles, for his part, paid tribute to the staunch and special friends that he called the people of Hong Kong. He said it was a night of continuity and change. Change in the sense of the transfer of sovereignty, continuity in the sense that Hong Kong will preserve its way of life for the next 50 years. President Jiang, of course, guaranteed that Hong Kong would have a high level of autonomy, there would be Hong Kong people running Hong Kong, and that the Chinese government would implement the joint declaration and one country, two systems. On democratic development, he said Hong Kong would have democratic development, but gradually and in accordance to the social and political reality here. The band is striking up again as the guests leave, and of course Prince Charles will be leaving on the Royal Yacht Britannia along with the Governor Chris Patten. Both of them will now be are now actually guests of the special of China. That's all from me here. Back to Anne.
Thanks very much, Ewan. Of course, British Prime Minister Tony Blair and Foreign Secretary Robin Cook, as well as U.S. Secretary of State Madeleine Albright, will leave the handover ceremonies. They won't be attending the inauguration ceremonies of the incoming SAR administration led by the Chief Executive Tung Chee-hwa. Instead, they'll be sending senior representatives. Well, right now we have Li Manyi standing by at the Wan Chai Pier. There are demonstrations still in progress. Manyi, what's the situation at the pier?
Thank you, Anne. Well, members of the April the 5th Action Group have scuffled with police. Even then, there are only about 15 protesters. They're completely surrounded by police and reporters, making it virtually impossible for them to move. But this didn't stop them. In their attempt to get nearer the convention centre, there were minor scuffles, and the two sides were at a deadlock for about 15 minutes. There have also been a number of attempts by individual protesters to pierce the human wall of police, sending it into complete chaos here. What's making it worse are the crowds of onlookers who are keen to witness the action. The sentiments of the protesters are getting angrier by the minute. It looks like it's going to take a lot to calm them down tonight, and while the police are marking the protesters' every move, they seem to be a little less prepared for the onlookers. But for now, back to you, Anne, at the broadcast centre.
Things look a little bit rowdy at Wan Chai Pier. Mark Chung is standing by at the Legislative Council building where there are other protests taking place. Mark.
Thanks, Anne. The Democratic Party show is still going on. Let's just pan out there and let the viewers have a look to see what's happening at the show right now. There are members of the Democratic Party performing a show here right now, basically denouncing the provisional legislature and proclaiming the defense for democracy. And Jay, if you could, can you just pan it upstairs to the balcony, please, and let the viewers take a look at what's happening up in the balcony.
East Branch.
Okay, and what's up there is that the Democrats are actually attempting to deliver the manifestos from the balcony of the LegCo building. Now the speeches will be done apparently in about 10 or 15 minutes by party chairman Martin Lee. From what you can see up there right now, there are probably about 40 or 50 journalists who are up there, maybe more even, maybe about 60, who are there surrounding a couple of the Democratic Party officials. I saw Andrew Chang up there earlier, but we haven't seen Martin Lee yet. But we know for sure that the speeches will be done by Martin Lee. And apparently, the 1-2-3 Democratic Alliance's Yam Sin Ling will also be there. The provisional legislature had originally said that it will not allow the Democrats to go up to the balcony to deliver the manifestos. But it looked as if the Democrats are already up there. They have not started delivering this speech. But the balcony really is just jam-packed with journalists right now. I can see a couple of my ATV colleagues up there. Obviously, there are also at least a couple dozen foreign correspondents up there as well. And Jay, if you could pan down a bit back onto the stage. The Democrats are still right down here on the stage. Now they're performing a song. So, and here, that's it for the time being. That's all I have. And we will have another update for you in a few minutes.
Okay, we'll come back to you later, Mark Tung, standing by at the LegCo building in Central. With me in the studio is Frank Ching. Frank, what did you think of Chinese President Jiang Zemin's speech?
Well, I thought it started off on a triumphal note about China's victory in regaining Hong Kong. But then he went on and he almost repeated all the main points of the joint declaration and the basic law. And I thought that was both very interesting and I think very useful in reassuring the people of Hong Kong that China is serious about implementing the joint declaration, which was signed 13 years ago, of course, when Jiang Zemin was not in power. It was signed by Jiang, who is not in Hong Kong today. But it's a demonstration that this is the policy of the Chinese government and not the policy of any one individual.
So China determined to continue the policies of Deng Xiaoping?
Yes, although I did notice that President Jiang at one point did talk about democracy, and he said that the democratic system would suit Hong Kong's reality. So I think he meant by that Hong Kong is not ready for full democracy at present. And I think that is a justification of the basic law.
Well, in the background, in the monitor, we can see some of the people leaving the handover ceremony, people dispersing. Some of them leaving, others, such as Prince Charles and the Patton family, heading over to the royal yacht, the Britannia, where later they will be traveling to Manila, and then the royal yacht Britannia being decommissioned. I'm told we can cross over now live to Beijing, where Craig Leeson can fill us in on what the mood is like there. Craig.
Well, it's a moment of triumph here for the Chinese, obviously, and 156 years of colonial rule redressed. The crowd reaction here was enormous. The final 10 seconds, well, they were counted down every second by the Chinese until that clock struck 000, and an almighty roar went out in the crowd here. And I guess, well, they feel very patriotic at this moment. That was followed by silence as the Chinese flag was raised, and then another almighty roar. That marked the beginning of a very impressive fireworks display. All eyes were turned skyward to celebrate Hong Kong's reunification with China. But one actually wonders how much the locals here understand about the reunification of Hong Kong. Propaganda has been very heavy here for the past 2.5 years, and in Beijing, well, there are posters everywhere talking about Hong Kong's reunification. But, well, they say things like, redress the humiliation of the colonial rule for the past 156 years, wash away the snow. So one wonders how much they actually understand about the one country, two systems, about the rule of law, and about a market economy. One suspects very little. But, well, a new issue. What will the Chinese look to now that Hong Kong has finished? What will the Chinese government use to spur nationalistic fervour? Of course, Macau is the very next colonial outpost to be returned to China in 1999. The countdown clock here, well, it may have finished its job for the moment, but in November it will begin another task, and that will begin that countdown to Macau. The celebrations here, they're not over. They will continue until 4 a.m. in the morning, and then at 5 a.m. we will witness the raising of the Chinese flag here at Tiananmen Square, and well, that'll be raised on a very new China. So once again, I think that will be a very proud moment for the Chinese community.
Craig Leeson, thanks very much, reporting live there from Beijing and filling us in on the festivities that are taking place. Obviously, a lot of merriment at the reunification now that Hong Kong has returned back to the fold. We're crossing over now live to the